Thanks everybody for attending today. It should be an exciting session because we've a very esteemed panel here to help us discuss a few things. I suppose the 10-year anniversary of blockchain now since the inception has happened, and there's a lot of talk in the town about it being faster, more efficient, less energy consuming. There's many platforms out there today, and interoperability is sort of taking center stage right now. The panel here today, we're going to share their opinions, in which we're better able to understand which ones will actually last the test of time. So I'd like to introduce you to our esteemed panel that have flown in from all over the world. I'll just start on my right here, actually, is Bashar Lazar. Bashar, welcome. He's Director of Operations of ConsenSys. He focused his early career on energy-specific projects across the MENA region. And he's a strategic advisory role right now for ConsenSys for the city of Dubai. So welcome, Bashar. On my left, you have Toufi Saliba. Toufi has founded 15 companies. If you don't mind me saying, he's failed at 11, and what we call a serial technopreneur. Toufi has a background in cryptography since 2001 and also machine learning. He has built and sold IP to Google, HP, and his last AI company is now become an Intel company. Toufi is also a co-author of TODA Protocol. It's what's claimed to be the TCP/IP, considered the next evolution of TCP/IP for value transfer over a communication layer. He's also the chair of ACM, and a mentor to some startup companies also. So welcome, Toufi.
Thank you.
And next on my left is Nick Spanos. Nick is an absolute blockchain pioneer. Also, I would call a Bitcoin pioneer. Nick is best known for his Bitcoin, setting up a Bitcoin center in New York City. It was the world's first live cryptocurrency exchange in 2013. And he also set it up right next to the New York Stock Exchange. Now, Nick, is there a reason why you actually did that?
I am unafraid.
It's a brave move. Okay.
I didn't know any better at the time. I didn't know anything about finance, about Wall Street, about regulators. I didn't know anything. I just did it.
Good man. And actually, if any of you, yeah, it's Disruptor. Actually, there's a brilliant documentary which I'd recommend to watch on Netflix. It's about Nick setting up that New York exchange, and it's called Bank on Bitcoin, Banking on Bitcoin. So it's worth having a look. It's only about an hour and 15 minutes, but it's really educational and certainly has helped me. Nick is co-founder of Zap.org, where they're laying the foundation for the next generation of applications. He's CEO of BlockTech, and he's an evangelist of permissionless blockchain. We will discuss that as well shortly. Okay. Now, on my far left, Ken, welcome. I know you've taken a long flight to join us today also. Ken is the CEO of 3 blockchain companies, so I don't know how he gets time to take a weekend off or even take a plane to come here. He's a distinguished researcher of big data, blockchain, and RegChain as well. Ken has also authored a book, Blockchain Security Technical Guide. It's in Chinese. I'm not sure if you have English versions, but it's after being taken on the market as well and accepted in that part of the world.
You don't need an English version. You just have to learn Chinese.
Yeah, that's it. Even better again. I leave that to you, though. Ken is also an advisor to many startup companies, blockchain startups, a frequent speaker at these type of blockchain conferences. And he has a focus primarily on performance and scalability, which is the subject of our conversation today. So welcome, guys. Myself, 1 minute, I'm a 6-day veteran in a company called Phonocracy. We're setting up a banking disruption company with customer-first mindset. We do a plug-and-play digital bank in a box. We're going to launch in this region as well. We're similar to what you see Revolut in the Europe, and we're doing eKYC in like 3 minutes now. Our technologies are building out. That's enough. Okay, so guys, I'd like to open up and maybe, Nick, it's been 10 years now since the blockchain has come to inception. Can you explain to the audience, just to set us off on a good platform, what has happened in that 10 years? What was the evolution just up to today? And we'll take going forward after that.
Well, so many years ago when Bitcoin did come out, and I read the white paper, I thought to myself, wow, there were many attempts at making a cryptographic currency, but it was centralized, and maybe some of the assets that backed those cryptographic central currencies were in a three-dimensional space, like e-gold, and another person, I forgot what it was called, Liberty Dollar, and so then the FBI came and took their gold. So when Bitcoin came out, the paper, and it said that it was, it was decentralized, and all the things that were, proof of work and everything that was needed to make sure that everything was provable and that it would survive censorship by government or anybody else. I believe that was and I still believe that that's the ticket. It's the people's currency. In the past, good governments and bad governments and bad groups try to control currencies and the people. And I believe that throughout these 10 years, we had a moment of clarity a few years ago, and we went from talking about it to building it and trading it, and then everyone else, we woke everybody up. That's why we opened up on Wall Street, because the reporters only knew about bad things about Bitcoin, and they only wrote very simple things. They didn't really understand the blockchain or anything like that. So they wrote bad stories, so we built the Bitcoin Center and put it right there in front of their face on the ground floor, 100 feet from the New York Stock Exchange, and we invited all the reporters in and gave them educational seminars, the way everyone should do if you're involved in the blockchain, and gave educational seminars to reporters, to traders, to hedge fund managers, to family offices, and then things started, we'd see them often, more often, and then we created a big, humongous ecosystem, and then the government created a license against us because they couldn't shut us down. Like I said before, we opened this place up, and I had a few lawyers at the door because we were not doing anything illegal. I never charged any commission. I never charged for the food. I never charged anything. I just gave it all for free because I knew that we needed this staging ground to launch, stage our stand on Wall Street, and it took a full immersion from this group to be able to realize the potential. And here we are today. So a lot of the bigger companies have saw how fast we were growing, and that they've co-opted our name sometimes, like blockchain, but they're talking about permissioned, closed, centralized blockchains, and that has nothing to do with immutability. Immutability comes from decentralized, permissionless blockchains, open blockchains, and the level of decentralization gives you immutability, the ability for the thing not to be able to be changed or deleted. Because if it's centralized, they can just take all the servers and throw them in the garbage, and then they can start again, and you won't know the difference. I mean, yeah, we have hashing. They're using hashes and stuff to try to prove, but the decentralization, some kid has a copy of the blockchain under his bed in Venezuela. There's other people all over the world have a copy of the Bitcoin, the largest, most powerful Bitcoin blockchain and Ethereum blockchain all over the world. So I'm sorry, I rambled on.
That's good. Well, that's great, and probably one of the advantages of
that's where we are today.
Yeah.
The big guys
right up to today
want to not be lost in obscurity. So they're using our poor little terminology and trying to slander our little Bitcoin that could.
That's a great account. Is there anything else that we think happened in that period? Ken?
So, yeah, I think the phenomenon of the blockchain is really quite recent. Like, it's about 10 years ago when, like Nick said, when the Bitcoin white paper published, not many more people knows. So it's since 2014 or upwards, then it taking the phenomena are, right? So people are more focused on the digital currency. That's part of it. And another part is really the technology. Recently, the problem with the digital currencies, the market tanks, it's really, one part of it is really the regulatory concern. Another part is really when looking forward for a new technology, like in terms of security, efficiency, confidentiality, privacy preserving, scalability, and interoperability, like what we said in this, we are going more discussion into it, right?
Yeah.
So if, I don't know, should I get into more detail in this or later?
Yeah, we can. During the, one of the nice things about being moderator here is I get to learn an awful lot from the panel before we get here today, by having prior discussions. And Tufi brought to my attention that he calls it sexy. It's about going forward from here. What do we need to think about and take care of? So it's security, efficiency, confidentiality, scalability, and interoperability. And my question really to the panel, maybe Tufi, if you go first, please. What can we do to address these gaps, these concerns, and then also, Ken, what technologies may fill those gaps for us?
Thanks, John. And great job gathering as much information as possible in advance. I like what I see here in the audience. Thank you all for coming. Before I get started, a couple of things I'd like to say. I've been in those events when the room is overly crowded and it's the hype is happening. But today, each and every one of you, I hope that you can take that as an opportunity so then next year and the year after, when the true revolution takes over, you will be champion and not just sitting there and be passive. We want you to be active. What Nick has done and many folks like Nick were necessary for this revolution to get to where it's at today, but it has not yet started. So with SECSI, SECSI is S-E-C-S-I, and what does it stand for? They're the 5 missing elements of why this technology has not hit the 100% globally yet. We're still at 0.2% global penetration in 10 years. The 5 missing elements, which one Nick alluded to, it's security. Decentralized governance is actually a security model. It's not a coup d'etat. It is a security model. So those that they refuse the decentralized model, either they don't understand it or they're trying to attack you. One or the other. There is no third option. The second is efficiency. We don't have efficiency yet, and I will explain why a little bit later. Confidentiality is not there by design. And fourth is the scalability. Now, many people, they talk about the scalability. Scalability is not the number one thing that we need to address. There's those 3 things first, and then the scalability. Number 4. Now, what's number 5 is the interoperability. We don't want to have to depend on a third party every time we need to exchange value. If you have something of value, a car, and someone would like to purchase the car, why do you need to depend on a third party? The technology is there today to enable you to not depend on a third party, and reducing that friction can be phenomenal for the global economy. And that's what we're working towards. When that revolution will take over, it will not take 4 or 8 years like the internet did. It will probably take 4 months. Get ready.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Tufi. Actually, just related to that, Ken, coming back to you, performance is obviously very, very important, and we see this is going to be a challenge going forward. You mentioned that you see it as there's 3 different layers of performance we need to think about. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So currently, the performance scalability, like Tufi said, it's one of the top 3 that we really need to think about. And in terms of how we're achieving this scalability, there's a different level. There's a layer 2 technology, mainly using the things such as relay chain or subchain technology, or Lightning Network in Bitcoin, Raiden Network in Ethereum. The main idea of this is to moving lots of transactions from the main chain to the subchain. And in the subchain, you can relax some of the decentralization element, so it can move the transaction fast. But still, you have a security on the main chain. If there's something wrong, you can have an exit to the main chain. So that's some essential ideas. There is a different technology to enable this, like using things like hash locking, and escrow, or idea of this. So this is the kind of layer 2 technology. The one which working on that is Cosmos Hubs, Polkadot, and Plasma, right? That's the main one. And then you have the on-chain scalability, which is layer 1 technology. So that's usually what they do is trying to enhance the consensus algorithm, such as Algorand, which is a close partner to Toda Network, I think, right? The Algorand is trying to improve upon the consensus algorithm, or hash graph, or Dfinity. There's lots of projects working on the on-chain scalability by improving the consensus. And another way is you improve it using a different kind of block structure, such as the DAG, the direct acyclic graph, right? The DAG technology. And maybe you're using a sharding technology. Basically, you have a Ethereum example, like Ethereum, right? I look at the Bashar. You will talk more about that maybe. So in terms of that, they will have, like, instead of have the smart contract executed in every node, why not we just partition the node? So certain smart contract is executed in one shard, and still you have the main chain security. So sharding is what lots of technologies using, like Zilliqa and Blockchain, Ethereum, they're working on this. So that is on-chain layer 1 scalability. Then we have the layer 0. Layer 0 technology is really, I think, the Toda Network is they are trying to do. They have both on-chain and the layer 0, but it's fundamentally change how the network works. Why not we tweak the TCP/IP so your packet can switch faster and also have an instant finality? So that's what is really blockchain is trying to do, is have a full decentralized network, but meanwhile achieve the efficiency and also the scalability. So maybe I take a little bit about, you talk about security, also the sexies, right? So my view of the security is, in terms of the blockchain security, you do have the security features within the blockchain. You have the immutability. That's good, right? But what if the data go to the blockchain itself? It's not a authentic data. It's already a garbage data. Then you have a garbage in, garbage out. That's why security also means that data originality is true. It's authentic. That's, I think, is maybe my spin of it. And also, it's not just smart contract security. Lots of people talking about smart contract security because there's lots of issues with EOS smart contract, with Ethereum smart contract. People maybe know the DAO attack, right? Or parity, multi-sig smart contract vulnerabilities. People maybe hear about a lot of this, but not just limited to this. You also have mining nodes need to be secure. Otherwise, people will, like there is, now the OWASP top 10s, some of the top security is really, they taking over your browser and then do the mining,
Yeah.
right? So there's lots of, also we maybe talk a lot about identity, how we can ensure the identity. Currently with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, if you private key lost, you're doomed, right? Your asset is lost. So that's not a production system, not an enterprise level system. You cannot say, hey, I lost my password, and then all my coin get lost. That's not. So we have to figure out a way that even if you're losing your private key, you can kind of recover it. Like with Basha, we just talk offline. Also, last year I visited Consensus headquarters in New York, Brooklyn, and talked with Andrew Key and also Ruben, right, about how we can do that. So there's lots of communication in between. So that's just security.
Yeah.
Efficiency is really way, how can we make sure its transaction cost is not so high and we don't waste too much energy like POW.
Yeah.
So it's a POW, it's have its own purpose. But in order for us to have a really worldwide usable blockchain, we do need to have can enable microtransaction, right?
Yeah.
Have a low cost. So that's efficiency and confidentiality. We have to make sure that our identity, our privacy data, our sensitive data is not published on the blockchain. Even if you need to use it, you have technology such as zero-knowledge proofing, right? Maybe some people of you know. Secure multiple-party computing or homomorphic encryption. Those are the new areas of crypto technology that we can leverage to enable the privacy, to have confidentiality. And I talk about scalability and interoperability. I talk later because I don't want to spend so much time on it.
Okay,
So
Thank you.
just to touch
John,
on a...
Sorry,
yeah, sure.
if you don't mind me actually bouncing back on Ken's point. I
Please.
think so. There was a foundation that was established by both Nick and Tufi in regards to the core importance of security within immutability that is found within decentralized networks. And Ken provided great examples of forward-looking strategy to develop scalability with these potentially multi-layered networks along with other solutions. But I think that it's sometimes important as well to take a step back and leverage the core values that we already control within the technology itself. Blockchain here, public blockchains being the sticky layer where we can essentially attach these proofs that will remain immutable, already serves a tremendous purpose as it stands today. Now, there is already work that is being done and solutions that are already being deployed that will allow us to potentially scale this without necessarily having to jump into solutions like multi-layer networks and sharding, where we've seen, for example, the Decentralized Identity Foundation was able to work and create a solution that allowed for the Merkleization of hashes, where, for example, instead of going at posting a single transaction for each signature of document and potentially facing the constraints of block size, we can potentially create a Merkle tree essentially composed of the hashes of potentially thousands of documents that can be validated all at once in that single transaction. So essentially, we can completely fight those metrics that have been put forward that we are currently limited by X 10 or 15 transactions a second, and instead right now enable the potential utilization of all of these different projects developed as the technology stands to create these elements of scalability and meet real world needs.
Okay. So you mentioned, thank you. You mentioned sharding, right? So just so everyone can understand it, I want to know what is it and why is it important, right? And then I'm going to relate it back to TODA, right?
So for a high-level introduction, essentially, the way we're looking at it is that when interacting and transacting on a public network, applications and individuals have found it to be costly and sometimes slow to potentially post transactions, and especially saw it to be relatively challenging to essentially have this when we try to build applications that require a high volume of transactions, potentially each and every one of them costing maybe a fraction of a cent, but piling up to a relatively high cost. And if the network utilization fluctuates and the gas cost or the transaction cost increases, we find themselves, these applications can find themselves challenged by some of these operating expenses that can keep on rising. Now, the discussion has evolved from that standpoint to see that the public networks are structured, and I'll speak more so for the proof of work enabled networks at this stage, provide an element of security supported by the miners, where each time a block is mined, a certain amount of rewards, whether it's in Bitcoin and Ether or any other cryptocurrency, is awarded to the miners for their role in securing this protocol. Now, the big question that came up was that if we're on a network that is rewarding potentially in thousands of dollars every minute for the security of this network, do each and every one of these use cases require this level of security? Are we for, let's say in my case, if I am going to use a decentralized identity to rent a bike on the street, do I need the level of immutability that the Bitcoin or the Ethereum protocol main network will provide me? Not necessarily. So essentially, we move on to a discussion where we explore the utilization of potentially additional smaller networks that can self-organize and support the potential a series of lower security requirement application, for example, with a higher volume of transactions, and allow for the settlement potentially of the final state on a periodical basis into the main network for the anchoring of the security. So sharding essentially, as being analyzed and developed within the Ethereum Foundation across the community as a whole, is a very interesting concept because it will potentially allow us to even bridge into discussions such as interoperability, where people envision, for example, within the Ethereum protocol as sharding a collection of smaller networks that are built onto the core basics of the Ethereum protocol, tied to the Ethereum mainnet. But who knows, maybe we will have a Hyperledger network as a shard that will be tied to the Ethereum network. We will maybe have a plurality of smaller networks that will emerge specifically tied to a use case that will be able to leverage this layer of security that the main public network will provide.
Okay, thanks. Tufi, do you think there's then, sharding and how often we shard? Can you maybe tell us, what do you think about, where would that end up?
Okay, so the current work on sharding hasn't been proven yet. There's a lot of security issues to be proven along the way. But assuming the sharding will work eventually, it's a good step because you don't have one ledger that is replicated through the entire ledger. You have it split up between several machines. Now, if you were to use your imagination and what's next and how you continue to do more and more and more sharding, because today we have 10 million users. We need to get to 10 billion devices eventually, so it's what's the maximum you can do in sharding? So if you think of that, and think of Bitcoin as doing that sharding methodology, what would be the smallest thing that you end up splitting up? Something that it's called Satoshi. Satoshi is the smallest unit in Bitcoin. Every 100 million Satoshi is equal to 1 Bitcoin. Now, some interesting things that in every talk that I do, I don't like to mention any of my companies or any of the protocols that I work on or whatnot. I'm not a self-promoter whatsoever. I like to talk about things that benefit each and every one in this room and each and every Homo sapien on this planet, okay? And I stand behind that, every single thing that I say. So the interesting thing that we started working on about 3 years ago is starting from that point where you take on each and every Satoshi and put it in a packet. So a few folks that they're doing implementation of Bitcoin on Torah that they're not necessarily ready to announce to the world because of a lot of political things. It's basically that. It's basically the smallest unit is managed on its own. Why we're doing this, and again, you start with the requirement, you start with the very, very last thing. What are we trying to accomplish here? With a decentralized governance, we said it's security, but we talked about efficiency and so on and so forth. If any one of you would like to power a nation like Madagascar today, there is no electronic money system that exists in the world today that is not going to actually make it poorer. I promise you that. Every transaction that happens is going to extract more value from Madagascar today. But when you ask the question, what do they have in Madagascar? They have smartphones, they have network, and they have people. And that's the three things that you have. That's the requirement. That's the only three things that the network needs to run. And that's what we're heading towards. So that's why when I said earlier, when that revolution takes off, it's basically 20-second install that does not depend on ISP, does not depend on servers, that does not depend on government, does not depend on anything. That is what's yet to come. I've said it publicly here, I'm being recorded. You will remember that moment in a couple of years. That, and one thing that actually resonated with me a long time ago, somebody with the name Peter Thiel, which many of you would know, he said, your best kept secret is the one that they don't believe you. So you don't have to believe me.
Very good. Okay. Nick, I also want to talk about your claim to be an evangelist of permissionless blockchain. Tufi, you also believe the same. But you know, speaking to the panel as well, I've got some sort of insight into there is permission blockchain also required for the likes of supply chain management, things like that.
Are
So
we two against two? Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
Is the two permission? Is that what- Okay.
That's a good idea. so
Is
Tufi,
this
Nick,
enough?
Ken, Bashar. Yeah, so firstly, I think make your claim firstly for why permissionless is the thing for you, right?
Well, like we said before, that immutability and transparency comes through decentralization.
Security, basically.
So permissionless, just like the internet, when the internet started, you know, everyone, when the internet became commercialized, I remember when I was on the internet, you'd get arrested for being on the internet back in 1978, but it wasn't what we have now. So the internet was permissioned and not much happened. So when the internet became permissionless, anyone can build upon the internet, World Wide Web, and make applications, businesses, and now we have all the things, these big giant silos of information that we're trying to take down. But maybe they were needed. They were needed at the time because now we pulled the internet, the permissionless internet pulled everybody in, and innovation comes through permissionless. Permissionless innovation is most innovation. I always say that, well, in our side of in the United States, we believe that the Wright brothers invented the airplane. I'm not sure if the same thing. So the Wright brothers were permissionless. They did not go from their little bicycle shop and ask the mayor if they can take their airplane, this contraption, and try to fly it and ask for a permit, because I don't think ever would the mayor say yes. The mayor would say no. So we would have came across, you know, the Atlantic on a donkey.
Well, yeah,
So-
I mean, I'd add to that. So to everyone's knowledge here in the room, permissionless is actually more secure than
Yeah.
permissioned. No matter what you hear otherwise and elsewhere, remember this, the properly done permissionless is more secure than permissioned.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like when you have a tree and you're growing it inside of a greenhouse, and then you have a tree and he's outside in the wild with the storms hitting it and salt water, and which tree is stronger? You know, we talk about the New York City rat. is probably one of the strongest animals probably in the world. And it's going to last forever because it's permissionless. Everyone tries to kill it like they tried to kill Bitcoin, and it's attacked millions and millions of times a second. Bitcoin's attacked, and no one has penetrated the protocol. Nobody. And they can't. And it's permissionless, and we've built this incredible economy on it, and we invite everyone to come aboard. I believe that through permissionless innovation, most of everything has been created. Permissionless innovation. And that was the only question?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, I wish Ken
Can
good
I
luck
give
now.
some
And
fancy?
so Ken,
I
you
mean,
got
I
it.
remember, we were talking about the throughput before,
Yeah.
and I remember back in 2013, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about it even earlier, and I drew up a multi-branch blockchain, and anyway, you can look that up. It's called Slide Chain. It's pretty quiet, huh? Slide chain, because you slide within multiple chains. So it's interchain operability. I didn't use any of the terminology that's being used today, except I have a root chain, and there's interchain operability. I didn't use that, but I said intercommunication, and just like TCP/IP, all of a sudden, I mean, in the past, the internet were, before you would have to know the IP address. I think in Berkeley, Unix, we used to 63. I don't remember, 133. Something, I don't know. I can remember it, but anyway. So we'd have to type in the IP address and go find some computer and read the files on the other computer. That's what the internet is. You're reading files on another computer. So we didn't have, until Dr. Makapetros, another Greek, I'm sorry, invented DNS, domain name server. We didn't have something that was mnemonic for humans to be able to traverse to remember. Humans don't remember these big giant number strings. But we do remember words like Amazon.com, Google.com. Dr. Makapetros, he wasn't a doctor back then. He's the grandfather of the internet. He invented .com, .net, .org, and had a file with the matching root file that had the name and the IP address of the computers. So that was a major step in interoperability of computing. Because before that, you had your computer and you sat at home with it, and it wasn't connected anywhere, and you couldn't find anything. Even if you were connected, you'd know a couple numbers. Or you'd build a war dialer, and you just start dialing different area codes in Virginia.
So maybe you go back to permission and the permissionless, right? Maybe give a definition of what's the permission and what's permissionless.
Yeah.
So permission, the blockchain is basically the node joining the network has to be permissioned, has to have an identity, right? So permissionless is really the node which join everyone can join. That's maybe the essential definition. So the question is like, which one will win? That's maybe not the essential question. It's actually, what is the real world application for both? I think it's both kind of paradigm has its own unique or its own
Well, it's
real
very
world
simple.
applications.
It's simple. You
So
don't.
permissionless is focused on more on censorship resistant. So more like the government, you don't control me, right? And permission the blockchain is really you have to meet the regulatory requirement. You have to know your customer, KYC, AML. You have to do that. So I think in order for the blockchain to be a real-world application, you do need both type of word. I agree with Tufi and Nick. Permissionless is more secure and it's more fair as well. It's like you have more involvement. But there is like a permission the blockchain. It's not really focused on the scalability. Like Bitcoin, it's not scalable, but it's permissionless. It has its own unique value proposition there. It's store of value. It's a digital code, right? So you cannot say, hey, if you are permissionless, then the government will not
No,
use
that's
it,
not what I mean by
then
permissionless.
then you have the problem. Yes, so I agree.
You can have a
on-
permission blockchain and have your
Exactly.
data. You
So-
can have your data on your own computer, but
it's
you want to
good.
put the hash, the
Yeah.
proof of
so,
the data.
So let me continue, right? Yeah.
This is
so,
good.
So let me continue. So I think I agree with both Tufi and Nick about the potential of permissionless blockchain. It has its own use. It's really manifested by the public chain, lots of public chain. Then you have a permissioned chain, which is really IBM's R3 has a CODA and EEA Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So there's three big force on that, right? So they have their use for they have some limited success. But the problem is CODA, Fabric, or EEA may be a different in its own proposition. But the CODA and Fabric, they lack of the token economy. It's more like they focus on maybe a digital ledger technology. The key issue with the DLT is focused on sharing the data on the ledge. But the ledger itself, in the future or even in the now, you cannot put all the data, everything on the ledge. You cannot scale that way, right? So let me finish, then we can discuss. So I will finish soon. I will make my point. I will make my point.
Okay.
So you cannot put all the data on the ledge. So that's the DLT technology itself will be doomed. It's more like you have a blockchain technology. It's maybe not really block. I like the unlock. Unlock means if you remove the block, you have the real application for the blockchain technology. So it's not really block-based, right? So it's really you really need to make sure your application, your blockchain application is reduce the cost. You improve the efficiency. That's what you need. And you make this very friendly for the end user to use. Okay? And from this, I think both permissionless and permissioned technology has its own use. And the major thing is actually how you can make sure they can have a good balance.
Okay.
Some
Yeah,
of
good.
the blockchain, like Ethereum, I think Plasma, they trying to say, hey, some of our technologies can be used by the consortium,
Yeah.
right?
There's-
Consortium, it's a permissioned blockchain. Some maybe not.
Yeah.
But how can we make a balance? Maybe you can anchor some of your major transactions on the public chain.
Yeah.
Some of the
Finally, you
chain
said it.
in this, right? So that's
All
my
right,
point.
you said it. Your turn. Come on.
Sophie, what do you think?
Before I actually jump in and disagree with you, 99.9999%.
No, he gave it to us at the end. He
Uh,
admitted.
But I think it wouldn't be fair for two against one. I think Bashar, maybe you get your
I
point.
would love to jump in at
So
some
please,
point.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to throw my 2 cents in. The idea is let's be pragmatic. I mean, where a lot of people are experimenting with blockchains, and the rise of permission blockchains really came at a time where people needed some level of comfort when they were prototyping, especially government agencies, enterprises, and even startups alike. And it's understandable. It makes sense. You need to get your hands dirty, get to know a little bit more of the
They
technology
took
itself.
your Ethereum and they made it private.
Here you go. You had a quorum, now you have Pantheon. But the idea is that if we are to really see the full value, personally, one of the core shortcomings that I've seen that has emerged from this idea of a permission blockchain is that we tend to do too much in one go, where essentially we see the permission blockchain as this alternative that will allow us to have privacy, scalability, have the immutability, and do all of these things without essentially making any concession, really. And what you end up having, unfortunately, is, in some extent, having these, what we call rather more DLTs than blockchain, that do not necessarily actually provide the best of all. They won't provide you the best scalability, the best immutability. They'll provide you maybe a lower valued approach across all of these different angles.
Cool.
Now, one
Okay.
last piece. So essentially, the final angle, and I think that this is what you mentioned, Ken, towards the end of it, is that there needs to be a certain level of plurality of solutions and ways of tackling some of these problems. And for example, we're seeing some of these clients, as you had mentioned, Nick, there are certain of these Ethereum private clients that have emerged that helped with the addressing of some of these solutions. But the key end goal that needs to arise in all of this is understanding how we can at least create and leverage the anchorage to the public network itself. And by doing so, we will have developed a solution architecture that will allow us to meet the needs for security, for privacy, while leveraging the full potential of a public blockchain without necessarily sacrificing on any of the components that have been mentioned here.
So the one thing I
Last
want
one,
to jump
okay.
in here. So, how many of you have heard that blockchain and DLT, they're synonymous? Like DLT as distributed ledger technology refers to blockchain. Please raise your hand. How many of you have heard of that? DLT, distributed ledger technology?
Whoa.
Okay. Well, that's great. Okay, there's a point here that I'm actually trying to make, which is the misinformation that you're being told every day. It started, well, I'm not going to name the company. It started with a company that they named it distributed ledger technology. Now, I'm going to tell you something that you're going to leave this room and you're going to be a little bit shocked with what you did not know before you came in. There's not a single blockchain out there that's actually distributed. They're all replicated. Okay? So that's wrong. The other thing is blockchain is not necessarily a ledger. Blockchain uses a ledger the same way my mom uses the vacuum does not mean that my mom is the vacuum. Okay? Now, the third part, they got it correct. It is a technology, which is a good thing. So they got 33% correct. Now, why am I telling you this? Is because when folks, they talk about permissioned blockchain, it's the same way when cars came to exist, but some people, they still had the horses, so then they went and put the horse in front of the car, disabled the engine, and let it to run, okay? Permissioned blockchain, if you ask any database expert, can they build the exact same security with the database system before all of that existed? And the answer is yes. And if the answer is not yes, fire them, okay? You can get that done with a database. There's no need for this revolutionary thing. It is just an evolutionary step. So if your clients are asking for permission thing and you want to do business, I understand. We all need to make a living. That's totally understandable. Nobody is here to blame. Somebody's trying to make a living, okay? It's a business. That's all they're asking for. But be truthful to yourself. The true revolution here is not a permission blockchain. Permission blockchain is just a database. The true
Slow one, too.
revolutionary technology here is a technology that doesn't have any hole in it. There's a saying in security, cybersecurity says, you're as good as your weakest link. What does that mean? If you have a single point that is centralized, forget it. There's no point to do anything decentralized. If somebody comes in and show you 99 points of decentralization, and there's still a single point of centralization, forget it. Just go back to databases.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much, guys. And on that point, I think we should take this debate outside.
I'm sorry that I spoke too much.
That's great.
I have a keynote tomorrow at 11:35. If folks are interested, I'll be
cool.
speaking for 25 minutes and 11 seconds.
Yeah.
Why
So
only
thank you,
get
panel.
15?
Thanks, Bazaar, Tufi, Nick,
I guess they
and Ken
have
as well.
questions.
Thank you so much.
The audience?
Well, you said Q&A, right?
Thanks for the very interesting debate. I'm just going to throw this in and let's see where it goes. I think they complement each other for the time scale of today. Okay? The future is coming. It hasn't come. You're describing it as once it happens, it will come. But for industry to be able to experiment within its current environment, they can't. Everyone will protect their data. It's just the general mentality today. So once that revolution comes, they will have to face it at that stage. But for them to experiment today, they need that environment so that they can experiment. An industry just is protective of their data. But exactly how you could look at it as Bitcoin blockchain being the
You can
foundation.
still have
Let me clarify.
encrypted data.
Sure, but the Bitcoin blockchain is very strong at giving you that immutability. Think of a permission network being the second layer in which you anchor onto it to get your scalability for today, and then the future is going to dictate it as we come,
Well,
as
I
we
think
go
that's
forward.
what we're saying over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
We're saying that. It took him about a half hour to say it, but he's still saying it.
Yes. I think that's.
So
Ken's
yeah,
point there, and-
if you have a partner you don't trust, or 7 partners you don't trust, you don't want one of them to control the servers.
But he came to.
So you got to take the hashes and put it on a permissionless blockchain.
But he's got the consensus for all of us, so we don't fight. Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
We're not fighting.
Yeah. So that's
That's how
another
we talk.
question, though. It's
That's
a
how we
comment.
talk in New York.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a healthy debate. Probably, I think something that has not been mentioned in the panel is probably like we could think about a hybrid model where we can have permission and permissionless technology, like managing, for example, identity on a permissionless level, but managing the data on a permissionless level because it's still a database. I like what Toufi mentioned, the 6C model. It's very neat. So do you allow us first to use the word or is it copyrighted or something that you... So my question to Toufi, is it really possible to achieve the 5 property in blockchain technology without, for example, compromising security, efficiency, etc.? Because one of the debates that's happening, for example, in the blockchain space, can we really achieve scalability without compromising, for example, decentralization? So I think is it possible, and how, if you can share your wisdom?
I know that Vitalik and many people, they said that it's not necessarily possible. They were probably depressed. I can tell you this, that if we live in a world that we give up, might as well just die. We have to continue to persevere. We have to continue doing things the most efficient way. This technology is about efficiency, and currently is not efficient. So we need to continue driving towards efficiency in the most decentralized setting that we can. And yes, we will get there. And I promise you, if it's 2023, give me towards the end of it. If it's 2023 and it's not there, embarrass me, however you want. But I promise you, by 2024, we have a new world, guaranteed. I see it from the way where I'm sitting, the same way I know that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. That's how much confidence I have that this technology is coming to be fully decentralized, enable every single Homo sapien to benefit from it, and to enable economy in this world can be efficient without having middlemen to depend on. You can have lots of services. People would pay for services, totally cool. Whether it's financial services, medical services, insurance, whatever it is, but not to depend on, and that is coming, and nothing can stop it.
Yep. Thank you, guys, and we wrap up there. Thank you so much. Okay.